G'day everyone, I thought I would do a vlog on a curious topic that it comes up a lot in my Discord group as I'm sharing the projects that I'm working on, and I'm often lamenting I want to include this extra law or this extra rule and I cannot find space in my books. And the obvious answer is, why don't you add more pages? And I know people aren't saying turn a tiny project into a big project or add an extra 30 pages. They're just saying add a few, maybe 4 more pages. And I also heard recently Matt Colville mention, I think repeatedly, the tyranny of the page count, as if this is the giant, big, binding constriction that is holding our projects back. I know he didn't mean that, but sometimes, our answer to these problems can be, I want to put this content in, let's just make the project bigger. And why making it bigger is a bad idea, and how it can lead to bloat and a lower quality of product, and how the constraint is can be a healthy and a good thing. The other part in this video, which I'm going to do afterwards, is walk you guys really roughly how I go about starting my projects. How I start with ideas and how I block out what content to include. Getting that nice balance, that nice distribution of content. Like the right amount of art, the right amount of lore, but also how many maps to include. How much space to give to each different section of lore. What is the pattern there for figuring that out? So it's going to be very rough, but I think it's good for you guys. You find it helpful just sort of peeking behind the curtain. Okay, let's jump into the page count and why a page count is a good thing. Firstly, how do you come up with a page count? Part of this has to be you get an idea of how big is your project. You have to have a feel for it, a vibe for it. Not all projects are hundreds of page books, multiple books. Some are small. Some ideas are really big. To really flesh them out, they're going to need a lot of space. Now, Fragged Empire was a curious one. So it's got Fragged Empire 2 has 2 lore books and 1 rule book. And I would say that for the Fragged setting, that's really bursting at the seams. Okay? And that universe is so big and there's so much going on, so much interaction between the different species and the planets, and there's a lot of that stuff. It's really hard to just contain it to the amount of space that I've given it to. But I'm happy with that because I want the space to be tight. I want the content to be pushing at the seams, crying out for so much not covered, so much more potential than what is in there. I want the ideas to not just be oozing out because they're interesting and evocative. I want them pushing at the edges because I want them to be screaming to there's so much more. Because when I want people to read it, I want people to make games and run games and make characters based within that universe very easily. Okay? Because I want that extra flow out to be made by you, to be made by the GMs and the players. Okay. Sorry, got a little carried away there. The other thing is, I set my page count also because I want a bit of uniformity amongst my books. I want them all to be 204 pages because that just happened to be about right for FE2, and now all future Fragged 2nd edition products are all going to be that same length with the same thickness of book cover because I want them, when you put them up on your bookshelf, to all just look nice and beautiful as they are all sitting next to each other. That the pleasure of uniformity. Okay. So now let's dive into why is restricting your page count, why can that be a healthy thing? I want, whenever I put an idea into my book, or I decide to dedicate a section of my book to a certain law or a certain rule or an idea, I want that to be done at the expense of other ideas that were not as good. Okay, there's an opportunity cost for everything that you put into your books. By choosing to dedicate pages to this specific content, you are choosing to not dedicate pages to other content. And I want all of the content in my books to be not just good, but to be great. I want the cutting room floor to be littered with not just bad ideas that I've rejected, but okay and good ideas that got replaced by other ideas. And if you have a mindset of I will just add more pages or I will just do another book, it can lead to a flabbiness in your creative process. Okay? You stop cutting just bad ideas and okay ideas. You stop cutting good ideas that could have been replaced by better ideas. And it leads to a mindset that becomes comfortable increasingly with not as good ideas. I know it's a very strange thing to explain because it's so ephemeral and arty process and all that sort of stuff. But I found that for me, and I suspect this is the case for pretty much everyone, you want to have that pressure. You need that pressure applied to you. You need to feel it. So when I'm writing up something, I am thinking, this idea needs to be good. Because I am dedicating precious page space to it, which I could have put these other ideas into. So therefore, it makes me not just assess whether that's a good idea, it makes sure that everything I put in is a good idea and is contributing well to the project. The other thing to consider with your pages and how you're dedicating space is to think about the cross-section of the project. Sorry, I really should be just change this to table of contents so you can sort of see how I've divided stuff up. Okay, so this cross-section, this is thinking about the percentage of your book that you are dedicating to each different type of content. The easiest thing here to consider is artwork. People are often asking, how much art should you put into your book? I run on a rough guide of about 1 in 4. 1 in 4 pages is art, is a pretty good standard. Some sections of my books will be a little bit sparser on that, and other sections will be a lot denser. And that's okay. We're talking about across the whole thing. Now, this 1 in 4 is primarily derived from what is the standard. Okay? So, if I had it my way, I'd probably want even more art than what I'm putting in there. But you start to get a different sort of thing. So if your project starts having more art than that, it becomes a visual project more than a literary project. And that's okay. I can think of some fantastic RPGs out there that are much more visual. Especially if you start getting into the really arty indie stuff. I wish I could bring up an example for you. Where every single page is hand-drawn and full of explosions and stuff. A very kind of zine sort of vibe to it. That's fine. That's good. Okay. Then you got other projects that have less art and more words. These are not cheaper projects, in my opinion, but they're more literary projects. They're more about words and ideas. For me, I'm probably sitting a little bit more towards the arty side, but not super heavily. Just a little nudge. And that's, so you think about your project. Now, the other thing to consider here is also the percentage that you give to maps. How many maps you're going to do? How much space are you going to give to all the different factions or groups or locations within your setting? You're going to want to and the way that you determine this is a lot of it's going to come down to not just finding the interesting and the fun bits and giving them more space, but trying to give a nice picture of your setting and what's important in your setting and the story that your setting is telling. So for Fragged Empire, as an example, the species takes up nearly my entire book. Okay? So the species and the subcultures, this is most of my book. Because that's what Fragged Empire is primarily about. It's primarily about these factions, these groups, the subcultures within their groups, and then how these groups interact together, their histories and their politics and their economic. Like even the technology, for example, I've put them into the subculture sections because everything's sort of done in relation to that, because that is the story of Fragged Empire. It is a story of cultures, of people. And so that's why I've dedicated so much space to it in my core setting guide. Other books, RPGs, might be more about locations, okay? Or like Frag Kingdom 2 that I'm working on is much more to do with locations and nations than individual species. Because a couple of the two primary nations in that setting are actually just really multi-species. They're multicultural. And that's because of their history. They ended up that way. But the multiculturalism in one nation feels different to another nation. And then you've got some nations that are a bit more monocultured. But the story of Frag Kingdom is not primarily about... It's not the same as Fragged Empire. It's different. Okay? And so you can see all this. Species. Lots of art. I'm going well for my 1 in 4. In fact, I think I'm probably a bit over it as I'm going through this. Okay, so that's something to consider. Okay, and if you were you're doing your own project, you would sit down and you would try and find what it's about. Okay, find its core themes, and then you would start jotting them down. Okay, and finding the fun and the interesting bits and giving that a little more space. The stuff that's maybe not as interesting or just simply not as complicated. Maybe it's a really, really, really interesting bit, but it can be explained very easily, so therefore it needs less content, less pages to sort of do that. And a lot of this is just going to come down to experience, okay? So now, I'm going to walk you guys through how I do a project, how I block stuff out. So, step 1, for me, notepads. Notepads, okay? I'm usually on holidays, chilling with the family over Christmas. I've taken some time off work so I can go and sit somewhere nice in the old, maybe at the in-laws farm. And of course, I start doing the fun bit of work, which is coming up with ideas. The blank pages, and then just filling stuff out. Okay, after I've done those notepads and I've got an idea for my setting, I will start to block it out. Now, the other bit I do is I'll start doing a Word document, and I start writing down these random ideas that I've had. So for this one, I've started with history. Don't read this. It's probably a lot of it's changed, okay? And then I start talking about, different species. I've got ideas for a couple of other species, and I start writing them down. Just jotting down the fun bits, okay? Getting the creative juices going until I feel like I've started to get it. I've started to find its message, its story, its themes, the interesting bits, the bits I want to do. The idea is not to get all the fine detail, it's just to block out the big stuff, the new stuff that I'm thinking of. Then after that, I'll jump into an Excel spreadsheet. And, sorry, it's being a bit slow as it loads up. Ugh, awkward video. Okay. So, this is the other bit. Okay. Is I will do these sheets where I write out stuff. and I start mapping out their interactions with each other. And again, this is probably not worth looking into too much detail, but this is me writing out a pantheon, because I'm doing a new pantheon for Fragged Kingdom, and so therefore I start creating new deities. And I start thinking, okay, so what are their names? What are they connected to? The colors and the symbology, the objects associated with them, their different sort of domains that they cover, the theological and philosophical roots of this. And I start writing them out. And what I'm doing by writing them out is I'm not just sort of getting my ideas out of my head. I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for opportunities of interconnectivity here. Okay? I'm also wanting a nice cross-section of stuff, because the religions is really, in this Fragged Kingdom stuff, is really about philosophy. It's ideas. It's worldviews. It's mapping out things that people care about. So I'm wanting a cross-section. Okay, I need to make sure that I'm covering everything from wisdom and warfare to, life and death and farming and trade and work and commerce. And then I'm attaching, I want a nice cross-section of personalities with these characters. These deities are like, they're NPCs, okay? They've got ideas. So I'm like, okay, I want everything from jovial to serious to foolish. And then what is the virtues and the vices of each one's. I'm wanting to make sure I've got a good spread, because it's possible to clump too much into one area. So maybe I've got too many wise gods. Maybe they're too together. They're too orderly. They're too nice. They're too competent to be interesting. And so mapping stuff out on these Excel spreadsheets is just a good way of me sort of, making sure I've got a good spread and it's a good reference when I'm writing stuff up. Okay. Because when you're like writing a block of lore, it's hard to keep everything else in mind of the big zoomed out perspective. So these Excel spreadsheets, I do that sort of stuff. The next thing I do is, this is an example of me just doing stuff for my rules. Okay, I'm wanting to make sure that I've got a nice distribution of species traits, for example. And so I'm mapping these all out. This is the same sort of thing. It's just how I treat the law is how I treat the rules as well. You want that nice balance. Excel spreadsheets are good for that. Okay, final one. So this is the other document that I have. And this is a living document. I'm constantly working on this. And so this is mapping out content that I need in my books. So I've got the title. This is like mapping out the art that I need. So here's the page it's on. Here is the thing. Here who is someone that I think is associated with that. I'll probably get this person to do the art. Or I'll probably, maybe this is a job for me. I've got to do this one. And down below here is just me tracking the subject of the art. So make sure I've got a nice cross-section of all the species. Kaltorans. I've got a bit too much Kaltoran art, but they're my favorite species. So, yeah, they get done. Okay, so that's some of the stuff, how I plan things out. The other thing I do is I open up an InDesign file. This is the program that I use for doing my books, and I start to block it out. Okay, I'm zoomed out here on purpose. Okay, so, and I know this is pretty filled out here. Okay, we'll go to this one. This is my setting guide. So I will block out with titles, and then I'll have these big blue pages here. Artwork goes here. And I'll put a little note, okay, this is the Wicked Drasim art here. And then I go through and I'm just inserting titles. Titles for everything, blocking out pages for art's going to go here. And I do that for the entire book. Everything. All 204 pages, I will go through it. And you can even see here. So here's an example of what they will often look like, okay? There's going to be a graphic icon here, so I'll put a little, little shape, and I just do titles. And I use these little hashtags to like tell me, I need to fill in content here. Okay, so I don't even know what this faction is called. But I know I need a faction here, and I've got an idea for one. Okay. And I do that for the entire book. And then once I've done that for the entire book, I will slowly start to fill it out with stuff. I will write the pages. I will commission the art, and I put it in. And as I'm putting it in, I still don't want to be too tight. Okay? Because as you're working on things, you can find something that's special. Or maybe something that's not working. Or maybe with your initial plans, you overlooked something. And so you nudge it around. Okay? And that's what I'll do. For 2 years, I will work in this document and slowly start to propagate each page and start to nudge it around. And that's just getting to the work, doing the time. Oh man, I got to show you this. I love this art. Sorry, it's totally sidetracked. This here was commissioned to be sort of this idea that like this is a temple to the goddess Corp, and this idea that they view these sci-fi technology as divine artifacts. Okay, so I really like that picture. It's great art. Okay, and that's what I do. So this book is a lot more. You immediately see it less about species, more about places. So you got all these coats of arms and these maps, so a lot higher content is given to maps in this book because that's part of its story. So anyway, I hope this has been an interesting watch for you guys, getting a quick glimpse into how I work, a peek behind the curtain. It's not that magical. A lot of it's just hard work, but the planning is very important. Planning out what content to put into your books, but also that planning phase, it can be such a fun phase, such an interesting phase, because it's just titles and dreams and ideas. You don't actually have to get into the hard work of writing blocks of paragraphs of text and editing and checking for word counts and stuff like that. So don't be afraid of that phase. The planning phase is fun. I love that phase. Also, don't resent page counts. Don't also solve your problems by adding more pages. Okay? Adding more pages should be a last resort. Okay? If you want some content into your book and you want to add some content, remove some other content. Cull stuff that is not as good, even if it's good content, for better content. And if you're in that mode where you're just used to doing that all the time, okay, it will make you a better creator. It will make a better product, a richer product. The world is full of bloated, just okay creative things. Okay? My job is not just page count, number of books. I want to create special stuff. And that special stuff is going to resonate more with people. I know it's a lot of work. It can lead to a lot of work. Okay? But you're creating something that you're going to be much more proud of, that your customers are going to like. Okay? And you're going to be rewarded by creating this good stuff by better loyalty, more interest in what you're doing, more excitement. You've got to sleep better at night, knowing that you're creating better works. Cool. Oh yeah, this is something here. I know it's not showing up too well because of the page. This is my timeline for Fragged Kingdom 2. This is just me blocking out stuff. Okay, this is not refined or drawn up. I'm going to go and remake this, but it's handy to have it roughly drawn up at the start when I'm writing the lore so I can kind of keep things in their place. Okay, cool. I hope you guys find this video interesting. If you have specific questions about this sort of stuff or something I overlooked, type it in the comments and I will reply. Or jump onto the Fragged Discord group. I am an open book. I love talking to other designers. I love talking to game masters. I love it when people grab my works and they redo it and they do their own twists on things. I love it when people come up with their own ideas in their own worlds, their own characters. Like that's what RPGing is all about. Okay, take care, guys. I hope you have a great day.